All right, guys, here's the last lesson, 12-6. We're going to skip 12-5. And the first thing we need to talk about, because this deals with combinations and permutations, it's just called the multiplication counting principle. There's an N in there. All right, so it's the multiplication counting principle. Let's use this example. What if you have 5 different shirts and 8 different shorts, and you're trying to select an outfit to wear that day? How many different possibilities are there for your selection? 5 shirts and 8 shorts. Well, each shirt has 8 different shorts that can go with it. The multiplication counting principle says you just take 8 and 5 and you multiply them together, and you've got 40 different possible combinations, or the number of possible outfits in this case. That's the simplest version of what we're doing. Doesn't matter the order of the shirt or the shorts. It's usually 2 or at most 3 things. It's a simpler version of things. We don't care about order or how many we're choosing out of a selection or all that kind of stuff. So that's the multiplication counting principle. Now, the second part gets a little bit more complex, and it's called a permutation. A permutation says that if you've got n numbers of objects and you select a certain number of them at a time, which is the R, and the order matters, okay? So one of the most popular ways to think about the order mattering is a batting order on a baseball team. So how many different players on a baseball team? There's 9. Well, that's the N. Okay. So that's the number of people. N is 9. N is the number of objects. And R is objects chosen. And the permutation is order matters. Obviously, a batting lineup, the order matters. Well, we've got to learn some new terminologies. The new terminologies is this little exclamation point in math. It's called a factorial. Well, 9 factorial is equal to 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And so we need to find the factorial key on our calculators. If you hit the math button underneath the alpha and use your right arrow to go across to probability, P-R-O-B, you'll find that the exclamation point is the 4th item down. But that also leads me to NPR. Mathematically, it's not public radio, which is what you're probably used to hearing about NPR from. Instead, it's a calculation that is also found on your key. And permutations, or NPR, is n factorial over n minus r factorial. So in this case, what's my n? Well, my n is 9. There's 9 baseball players. Now, how many of those 9 players am I going to choose at one time? Well, I have to choose all 9 for my batting order. And so it's over 9 minus 9 factorial. So I end up with 9 factorial over 0 factorial, which leads me to another very important point. 0 factorial is equal to 1. So I can almost just cross that out, because anything divided by 1 is itself. All I need to know is 9 factorial. So on your calculator, punch in a 9. Hit the math key. Use the right arrow to go across to P-R-O-B, probability. And then go down to the number 4 item, factorial. Hit enter, and you get 362,880. That's the different lineup combinations that you have available. 362,880. Now, another simpler way to do this is to hit the math key, go across to probability, and then find NPR on your calculator. Plug in a 9 for N and a 9 for R, hit enter, and you get the same thing without having to do the factorial. So there is an actual calculation button on there that allows you to do this. Let's do a quick example dealing with a new CD released by a band. Let's say a band is releasing a new CD. They've already recorded 7 songs. Okay, this is kind of outdated because we don't do as much on albums or CDs anymore. Everything is released as singles more often now, but a little bit old school here. There's still albums that are released too. But I've got 7 songs. They're going to put 5 on the CD. Or on the album. So what's my N? Well, my N, what's my possible choices? 7. But how many am I going to choose for this CD? R. Now let's figure out, is this a permutation or not? Does the order of these songs matter? Well, yeah, you better imagine it matters. There are, big record labels that are very careful to select the order of songs and the songs that are on any given album that's put out into the public. So yes, the order matters. So this is a permutation of 7p5. Well, that means 7 factorial over 7 minus 5 factorial, which is 7 factorial divided by 2 factorial. And so on your calculator, 7 math and factorial is equal to 5,040. 2 factorial is pretty easy because 2 times 1 is just 2. So divide that by 2, and I've got 2,520. The other option is just to hit math, go across to probability, hit NPR, and type in a 7 where the N goes and a 5 where the R goes, and you'll get the exact same choice. All right, so that's permutations. Last is a combination. Combination is just like permutation. It has an N and an R. The only difference is the order does not matter at all. So in a permutation, you got to worry about which object is first, which object is second, which object is third, and that order changes everything else. Think about a batting lineup. A combination, on the other hand, looks like this. What if you had 20 people that shows up to court and they're available to be chosen for jury duty? Well, if you don't know, most juries, at least in Texas, have 12 people on a major civil or criminal case. There's some instances where that changes, but it's rare. So there's usually 12 people on the jury. Does the order of jury members matter? No. I don't care if you're the first person chosen on the jury or the 12th person. You're still on the jury. Your vote is going to change whether this person gets convicted or not if it's criminal. And so the order does not matter. So my N is 20 people. How many are being chosen this time? 12. And so I have an NCR equal to 20C12. And when I grab my calculator, I've got a new calculation because NCR is equal to N factorial over R factorial times N minus R factorial. So it just adds the R factorial times the bottom, which in this case is 20 factorial over 12 factorial times 8 factorial. Permutations usually have a lot more choices because look at how big the denominator can get when you've got these going on down on the bottom of this denominator. So combinations have less possibilities. The order thing makes lots of more possibilities for them. these. So we go to NCR on our calculator, plug in a 20 and a 12, or you can go old school with this calculation and do all of this using your calculator. It's up to you, and you end up with 125,970 choices. That's a 5 right there. So you can see how many different possibilities there are. There's a lot more with permutations. The formulas are relatively easy. The calculations, you've got this new factorial button that you've got to be able to use. So make sure you play around with your calculator and find it. Again, it's under the math key and under the probability tab, PROB. And then you just have to plug it in to find it. So mess around with your calculators until you can figure it out, or join me in tutoring if you're struggling with it a little bit, and I'll help as much as I can quickly. But other than that, fairly simple stuff. You're just plugging and chugging into some formulas here. All right, guys, last lesson of the year. Don't forget the assignment is due Thursday at 4. Finish strong. You then should review and do the review at least once or twice before the test sometime tomorrow. I've got the test set up, opening at 8 o'clock and closing at 5. So all tests have to be completed by 5. Good luck, guys. Let me know if you've got any concerns or questions.